great to be here, and I feel like all of the speakers today sort of followed a theme, a thread of connection, and I'm going to definitely talk to that and sort of speak more specifically to the connection and what that means, right? Like the connectedness to the one, the nature, infinite consciousness, God, human beings, and sort of healing the separation, right? Like there's so many sectors of separation that we've created in our minds that don't really exist. And this speaks to permaculture, right? From permacultural sense, but in a more like metaphysical, philosophical sense as well, because we all come from the metaphysical, right? We all are rooted in that. Like we're combined from nothing. The same elements that are in your body are in the earth, are in the stars, right? So I just want to say, today is a great day, really auspicious for that. It's the Peace Day, it's Climate March, and we're doing this, and there's like all this energy being focused around shifting that, severance between ourselves and connection overall to living systems and beyond. So I just want to say, just give a little introduction. This is me and my little boy, Mars. He's 18 months now. We live in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, and this is significant to me because Mars represents propagation. He represents, continuing of a species, succession, like living systems. So, there's me, and then I couldn't be here without my father and grandfathers and the ancestors, and that goes all the way back to, the larger neighborhood that we exist in, to, the beginning of this planet and the beginning of this solar system. And so let's go kind of zoom out to our collective neighborhood as a super species, right, as a super organism. And here we are. It's our neighborhood. Our solar system sort of just moving around, just balancing itself in this delicate relationship of gravity and radiation and all these spinning planets and shifting tectonic plates. And I mean, even there's a concept that someone conveyed in a video recently that I thought was really compelling. Even what we see here doesn't do the dance that we're in this existence justice, because even the sun is spinning through the cosmos, and all of the planets are rotating around it in a spiral while the sun is moving. So, what are we doing here, right? And to get some context on what we choose to design, what we choose to introduce in our lifetime in this planet, and while the biology in our cells is functional before it withers and dies and goes back into the nutrient system, which is our cosmos, our planet foremost. What do we do with it? And Zoe and Ali and Arnaud and I forget the second gentleman, Paul, all have made presentations sort of speaking to the connectedness of things. Some of the activity that's been happening in our neighborhood, specifically this planet, goes back, 4.6 billion years ago, something like that, and we're like over here, and then some point in this little slice of this huge spiral of 4.6 billion years, in our, I don't know, maybe say a couple 100,000, maybe a million years of existence, this guy named Darwin comes in, and he says, maybe not even 100 years ago, and he starts to, introduce this concept of competition as the primary function of an animal or plant within this environment. And 30 years after he introduced this, and it was accepted by science, conveniently, of course, he sort of corrected himself and, sort of informed everyone that the environment has so much more to do with the choices that an animal or a species make and how much cooperation is there. And I want to talk about, some of the challenges that arise when we don't cooperate. You know, we have climate change, and climate change as a symptom of, you know, desertification, as a symptom of, you know, clear-cutting forests, losing diversity in our planet, you know, and just a hiccup in the way we design things because of our sort of evolving consciousness. We are growing into the responsibility of everything that we have the power to create. So yeah, we've gone into this mechanical methodology of like producing things and technology and products as, you know, an extension of what we can do, you know, technologically and with our minds, but losing like the value, the substance in the connection that's been broken, you know, hence wars and hatred and, you know, lack of self-confidence in these things. Like if you know that you are the expression of the divine everything or the infinite, would you be unconfident about it? Like everything is okay. And so, you know, we have some challenges or opportunities to face, and someone said earlier something about stress, and I thought that was really great. And you know, what I took from, you know, this question about what is stress in relationship to happiness, and he like elegantly stated, I'm going to paraphrase, that stress is pressure, right? And we like to see like, you know, maybe stress is what we associate with negative pressure to change, and maybe opportunities what we associate with positive pressure for change, but stress is pressure. Like it forces movement, like it offers an opportunity to respond or face a consequence. And here we are, you know, with consequences at our door asking us to change, and we have a choice for the future. And you know, permaculture designs, you know, through these things, for, you know, the primary elements are environmental care, economic care, and care for people, right? Like economic not meaning dollars or, you know, individual currencies per se, but value exchange, you know, how we lubricate our sort of motivation, how we motivate each other to participate in things. And some of that currency and economy is emotional. It's like what you care about, what you're impassioned to do, what you're driven for. And, you know, to speak to health issues, things that empower, you know, the underprivileged, these are economies and currencies in themselves. And here we are with permaculture, one as a methodology of using the environment and the ecosystems, which include money, dollars, which include our emotions, our happiness, which include, you know, the plants and the microbes and wastes and things like this that are essentially often left out of what we consider successful designs, right? Like, or, you know, how much money did we make, and, you know, how much money did we put into, you know, how much time am I spending, and that's the end of the conversation. And what I'm here to do right now is invite us to sort of weave in more aspects to consider than that. So for instance, let's say, you know, an organization like Zoe's, which begins with heart and then takes into consideration, you know, its how to compensate for the energy being put in. It also takes into consideration the relationship with nature and how much is being given versus how much is being taken away. Let's say that never amasses, you know, to be a $5 billion endeavor, but the fulfillment that's there goes way beyond the money, because the money is just vapor, right? You can't take it with you, but the heritage for future generations gets richer. And so, you know, what I do is design solutions that are immediate, so, you know, they may be related to gardening or building greenhouses or advising a company on how to create allies in nature or use certain nutrients within an economy to allow them to spend less to earn what they need to earn. And, you know, there's a company called Dropping Seeds, which basically well, I'll show slides. I'll show the website later, which basically brings foraged and organic plant medicines to people as an alternative to treatment or, sort of managing body chemistry in other ways. So that's an example. And there are 12 design principles that we discuss in permaculture. And I'm not going to go through the details of each one, but just sort of imagine like the implications of each one of these phrases as I read them out. One is observe and interact with the environment, with the biosphere, with the ecosystem, to catch and store energy, right? What does that mean? Like you have spiraling planets and a spiraling sun and a rotating this and all these pressure systems. There's energy there. Things die and live, and there's energy released in all of those places. There's emotional energy when people get charged and get together and pray, things like that. How do you catch and store or redirect that energy for later use? Obtain a yield, which is to find the exchange for what you're participating in, like what you give and what's coming back. And that comes in so many forms, not just in currency. Apply self-regulation and accept feedback, meaning to do and watch and redo, right? And continue that process with no ego. Use and value renewable resources and services. So, how do we limit the amount of non-renewable or very high embodied energy products and services that we bring into our lives? Like, you may sit on something or use something that's very convenient, like a lot of the furniture that we use has so many toxins that are typically identified by regulators as toxic, but when they go into a product, it's okay because profit's involved. And so much of what we do as consumers is just sort of ignore and block that out. So, conscious consumerism, invite yourself to learn more about what you're participating in as opposed to just blindly following the leader, so to speak. Produce no waste, meaning that waste is a design flaw. Waste is the lack of thought about what is happening in the life cycle of a thing. If you know, for instance, that you're going to, do some metal work and then you need to rinse that metal, then you need to have a plan for the wastewater that's coming from that rinsed metal. Maybe there's minerals coming from that metal that can go into another system that shouldn't go into the rivers and the sewage system and out into the ocean because it kills off the life that's surrounding. Design from patterns to details. Like there's gravity, right? And that has a particular function. That means that water is going to have a certain amount of weight because of its mass, so you're going to have a certain amount of weight. And you can use water to create pressure for itself so that you don't need to use a pump and just use the weight of the water itself by holding it higher. So one of the principles we follow in permaculture is to catch water high and then use it later because it has all the power that it needs, about 10 pounds per gallon or so. So you raise that higher and higher and you get more and more energy from it. That's just an example. There's so many slices of that. Integrate rather than segregate, right? It sounds pretty diversity, right? Work with diversity. Use small and slow solutions, like as opposed to racing to accumulate, sort of what's really happening and design very rich, integrated, interdependent systems, businesses, relationships, patterns of movement and sort of communing within your own neighborhood, for instance. Use and value diversity. Like it's everywhere. Like evolution happens with diversity. Diversity says if something fails, something else is there to continue and step into place and show where there's opportunity even within failure. Use edges and value the margin, which is like where things meet, where the environments start to change. That happens in the forest, it happens in the ocean, it happens in our relationships, like beyond our comfort zone. Like what's happening at the edge of our comfort zone, like there's energy there to make change and to meet and do new things. and to create and respond to change. So all of this requires, to me, when I hear that, all this requires like maybe dumping the ego a little bit, right? Like less of you, less of like, oh, what am I going to get out of this? It's more about, living with the acceptance that there's one larger thing happening. And yeah, you, of course, take care of yourself, right? Like, take care of your family, right? That happens first. But it's not over or below everything else. A tree is networked into the entire forest with no prioritization of itself over the forest, right? The roots and the rhizomes connect and extend for miles, and they inform each other and support each other and build diversity for other species, and they don't compete with each other, except in the fact that something's going to get more shade than the other. It dies, but it dying supports the forest. So like, keep this in mind. So yeah, I just made a little example of like, the Earth's orbit, doing like 18.5 miles a second, solstice seasons, and reliance on variable, predictable conditions, right? All these things create conditions that we know as seasons or like weather patterns or whatever. In each one of those, we have opportunities. And let's say we look at opportunities that come from weather patterns, and we get things like renewable energy. And renewable energy is a really big conversation, especially in the as a sub-conversation to climate change. Right? We have all the fossil fuels being mined and the expensive process of getting those fossil fuels, not to mention the detriment that the fossil fuels cause to the environment. And we have the opportunity to sort of shift and just work in the flux of the energy that's already available. And if you sort of dumped maybe 40% of the use of fossil fuels for the renewables, we'd end up with about $5 trillion in savings, and I don't know, maybe like $25 per gallon saved per, just it's a tremendous amount of economy, right? That will go back into the larger cycle of economy. So there's a huge portion here, like, to think about as entrepreneurs and educators, and even like individual homesteaders, for like people who are thinking about like getting a home and doing things with nature, how to use autonomy as a nation, as an individual, as a community, to free up resources, to free up nutrients. Like if you digest really hard food, it makes you tired, you can't think that well, right? So imagine an economy doing the same thing. So we're inviting entrepreneurs to say, okay, how do I free up resources so that I need less and I'm earning more in comparison to what I'm investing into. So yeah, we have wind and geothermal and biofuel. Just imagine New York State, for instance, right? With about, I don't know, a lot of farms in New York State, especially outside of New York City. Like you go upstate and the state's huge. And a quarter of the acreage in New York State is farmland. Each farm being about 250 acres, right, on average, according to the state controller. And imagine all of the biofuel available from like forest waste, leaves falling down, trees falling down. These things that happen every season, storms, all this stuff that happens, right? You collect some of that, you create biofuel. So, you put that in context and you say, okay, so let me give you a comparison, right? Like, look, that's a huge opportunity, right? Like, it's billions of dollars of revenue available through alliance with nature. And this is on a city level, you can do it for yourself. But then, Cuomo is like, well, as it stands, like, I don't want to blame it on Cuomo, but it's like, as it stands, maybe 80% of the biogas that's in New York is imported from other places in the world. Like, what does that do on an economic scale, to ally with nature? And it's just a matter of shifting the consciousness to see the partnerships available in our, collective neighborhood. So yeah, just a little bit about me. I'm packing tires. I do natural building. I trained with a group called Earthship I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with them. They build radically sustainable housing. And I say radically because it's beyond LEED certification. It's beyond passive.
Earthship.
Yeah,
Earthship.
yeah. It's beyond passive house standards in that the homes catch, clean, and reuse their own water with no connection to a municipal supply or groundwater supply. So it takes nothing from the living system. Uses the water 5 times, so it's 90% more efficient than what we currently call plumbing. Heats and cools itself without fuel. Right? Like, that's cool. It heats and cools itself without fuel, making it an autonomous living scenario. Is constructed mostly from indigenous materials that exist everywhere. Poor places that don't have standardized construction, Home Depots around, or people who can't afford Home Depots, we can use tires and cans and bottles, plastic and clay and soil to make homes that heat themselves, catch their own water, reuse water several times, and grow their own food. Also manages its own waste.
Is it rain reliant? Rain?
Yeah, it's rain reliant. We catch rainwater. So this, some people may say, but what if you don't get a whole lot of rain? Then I'll, be really thirsty. So let's say, let's take a place like New Mexico where these were invented and implemented in droves of hundreds before it went out to the rest of the world. In a really heavy rain year, Taos, New Mexico, where the home of this architecture organization is, receives about 13 inches of rain. It's not a lot of rain. We get about 42, 43 in New York, right? And that's like our average. Big difference. With 13 inches of rain on 1,000 square feet, like a roof, most roofs are larger than 1,000 square feet, let's use a round number, you're going to end up with about 7,000 gallons of rain per year, right? So let's say your roof is 2,000 square feet, then you end up about 14,000 gallons of rain per year, and you can budget that. Also, you can decide to use your water smart and not use it for, let's say, like irrigating your plants in a desert, although you want to grow food outside. You can do, permaculture says, we'll take earthworks for rainwater harvesting, which is a method of like digging pockets of rainwater capture into the ground so that it stays in the places that you want it, and you plant appropriately with the water that's captured in the ground. You cover it with mulch, so it's not evaporating quickly but goes in quickly, and now we can grow things in a desert that you wouldn't normally be able to grow. Plus, you don't have to use your drinking water to water plants. So you have more food growing using less resources, just a little design up front. Just a matter of like, it's not necessarily more expensive, you just have to think about it. You have to choose to care, and that's the shift. And Faust at his Center for Bioregional Living, he kind of put me on and taught me a bunch of things. He's an awesome educator, super knowledgeable guy, super passionate. He's there with his daughter and his wife, and they're all just really awesome people. We're building, if you see here, this is a natural building, straw bale tiny house, which means it's like not a conventional home with like 3 bedrooms or anything like that. It's like 1 bedroom with a loft section, a bathroom, maybe an outhouse, everything you need to survive using as little material as possible. As you see, like there's cedar post here, like there's like a whole tree basically, just with the branches cut off, used as the post, so less embodied energy is going into like creating lumber. Actually, these trees in whole are a lot stronger than lumber because trees have a Wurlitz pattern, like this, like a spiral, which is a lot stronger than when you slice them down, which inherently like invites them to split. Trees don't split. So a tree that thin is stronger than a piece of lumber twice as large. And this is Paul. He's an awesome farmer. He sells at the farmer's market. He's been there about 10 years. I work with him, bring some of his produce, livestock to restaurants in the city and we've partnered on bringing a number of products out together and creating cooperative programs with other farmers, foragers, and merchants. And we've also conceived a project that I'm going to show you in the next slide of a passive solar greenhouse that sort of supports food systems in New York State, but could go anywhere using Earthship technology converted for agriculture. And this is the greenhouse. This is an image of it, at least. And so, yeah, this little mound here represents a compost pile, pretty large compost pile, about 30 tons or so, with a ton of like gathered brush and things like that that are going to inherently create heat energy once the microbes begin to digest the living material that's there. We take the water that's captured from the roof, stored in these tanks, run it under the ground and in coils around the inside of these piles. And the pile, designed right, will give you about 140 degrees for 6 to 8 months at a time. And we take the resulting hot water from there, run it under the ground again, and into the floor of the greenhouse, and we've passively heated the greenhouse with microbes who don't ask for money forever, as long as you keep it up. And yeah, so yeah, this thing will heat itself based on, I mean, I'm the last one, so I figure I'll just give you guys a bit more detail than I gave last time. You know, there's some passive solar design which says this angle here in our latitude is going to allow the sun to reach the back here and hit this tire wall, which is packed with soil, which allows for the tire to get, you know, hold a significant amount of heat. It's like an oven, so like a ceramic oven. So the sun comes in, charges it, fills it with heat. When the sun goes down, the heat releases back into the environment, neutralizing itself and creating a comfortable zone. And then you'll have this separation with another set of glazing here. So this is like, you know, 70 degrees all year long. And then from here to here, you'll have a variance of about, you know, 40 to 90 degrees, depending on which season it is, and you choose your plants accordingly. And of course, we have this backup heating system, which can kind of, when it goes down to 40, thermostat kicks in, tells that water to flow through, and we bring it up to 70 or so. If you want that. So a farmer in New York State, for instance, could grow kumquats and lemons in January and not have to ship them from California, which cuts down on our carbon footprint, which lowers embodied energy, creates a more competitive agricultural market. And if, you know, things like $4 billion in agriculture in New York State, you kind of go statewide and multiply that by 50 or so. And yeah, you're talking about a significant amount of revenue for partnering with nature. This is a program that's been extended for a second round in New Mexico, where the home of Earthship, with Brad Lancaster, who is a rainwater harvesting expert, and his thing is catching water in the ground in dry lands and converting dry lands into fertile lands, where we can have apple trees in deserts by properly like designing the way the water infiltrates into the ground. Of course, you do small projects at a time, but over time you do more and more, and you get more and more. Like, it's about giving more than you get back. If, as long as you can see that if I give more than I get back, I'll always have more than I need. You know, and that's all you need, is more than you need. Earth2O is another organization that SirRoan Design, which is the company that I am partner and founder in. This Earth2O program in Costa Rica is about bringing students, the next minds in renewable energy and renewable design, to Costa Rica to do tours of commercial scale renewable energy plants. In Costa Rica, I don't know if anybody knows, 70% of the renewable energy in Costa Rica comes from renewables, with like maybe 60% of all that coming from hydrothermal, which is like rivers running into turbines. You know, they get 100 inches of rain a year, so the rivers run pretty strong. those kinetic energy turns the turbine, turns a generator. That energy stored in a battery, and then a little more complex than that, but then sort of distributed around. There's also wind, it's solar, and it's a 2-credit program, and we're working with universities all over the country. Last year there was about 400 students. In the last 5 years there's been about 900 students, with 50% of the students going on to be employed, with this as a catalyst, as one of the impetuses for why employers chose to hire these, or choose these people as interns, because they actually toured the facilities that most people who are studying renewable energy and engineering, maybe in their entire career, will never step foot in a plant like this. They've seen 5, talked about bottom line, operated the machinery. It's a 12-day course, and if anyone's interested and has, as adults, continuing education, or as part of your university program where you might want credit, just connect with me and I'll tell you more. Just get in touch with me if you want to know more about this, or if you're thinking about planning a step in your business and you'd like to be more aligned with sort of natural allies in your community, and how to think about designing that, I'm open for that discussion. And community gardens, or your family's property in Georgia or Puerto Rico, whatever, right? Let's do stuff that makes it better for the next generation, and it's always like that for me. I'm always interested in that.
I'm beyond grateful.
Again, this is such a beautiful day, and we are coming to an end. And I can't thank you enough. I think the content of your presentation is really what the world is in need with urgency, I think, because not many of us know enough about it, and that we each have to do our part to just spread what this is all about. And if we don't know about it, we can just send them to SirRoan's website and and be educated. We will be distributing this video. I hope the quality comes out well, so that the public, and please do share it to as many people as possible to really support this. And this is why Choice of the Future is here. And again, on behalf of Choice of the Future, we are beyond grateful for all the speakers today, and your dynamic contribution. It's very, very important topic in this world today. So I can't thank you enough.
Thank you.
I'm lost with words.
Okay. We don't need so many.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
That's fun.